So you just got paid. Now what? Hello and welcome to the Just Got Paid podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hellon. And on today's episode, we're going to be discussing debt in America. I'm going to be going over a few statistics that have come to light recently in the last week or two with different news articles that have been out. And there's also some statistics that I want to provide you with and give you some real world examples. But most importantly, as we discuss debt, I want to make sure that you're aware of, the solutions that are out there, the things that you can do to get over, get past, get through the debt that you may be facing. So I'm going to highlight a few things that you can do today, no matter where you're at, no matter what's going on in your debt situation. So if you have questions, things that you want to know, feel free to ask. We always record our podcast live, whether we have a guest or whether I'm doing a solo episode like today. And so I really just kind of want to take the time to make sure that I'm addressing the things that are on your mind. One of the key things that I always discuss with clients is that debt becomes a silent wealth killer. Most people don't want to talk about their personal debt. They feel like it's a very personal thing. They don't want to be embarrassed, and they don't want to talk about it. They won't talk about it with friends, families, and until you really get them in a situation where they're going through debt counseling or even going through our program with homeowner prep, then we can really have a transparent conversation about what's really going on so that we can address it. And so one of the things that I really want to do is I just want to make sure that we put it out in the open. This is a safe space, but I want to make sure that people know that it's okay to have these conversations because that's the only way it's going to get better. If you're holding it in, you're keeping it to yourself, and you're just digging deeper and deeper into debt, it's not going to help you reach the goals that you have, whether it be home ownership or building wealth, whatever the case may be. So if I can encourage you in one thing, it would be to be open, have conversations, discover solutions that you can implement to help you reach your goals. And so definitely want to start out with that. As I talk about this process, and one of the things that I was really keen on when we started this podcast was I want to be more transparent. I want to talk about my own experiences. I want to talk about experiences that my clients have been through because I think it's important that listeners understand that you're not the only one going through these situations. Obviously, when we get into some of these stats and we talk about the trillions of dollars in debt that America has, you'll realize it's not just you. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's nothing to feel ashamed about. It's just a process in here in America that we're pretty much addicted to debt. We learn very early to take on credit cards. They're on the college campuses. Most people will open their first credit card in exchange for a t-shirt, right? I remember I started my credit at a jewelry store because I wanted a necklace. And so that was kind of like me diving into starting a credit line. And so these things happen, these different experiences happen. Everybody's situation is going to be different. But as I talk about different examples of how my clients have gotten through these situations or me personally, I want you to know that you're not on your own. And so if I could relay one thing to you, it'd be that. So let's just talk about the recent news that came out. So the Federal Reserve Bank did a survey at the end of 2024. And what they found is that American household debt actually went up to $1.21 trillion. That is a trillion with a T, a 1 and 12 zeros. And so it actually went up from the previous year by $93 billion. So we're definitely going the wrong way. We know our national debt is at an all-time high. We know our country, we spend more than we make. We don't produce much. But in your household, you have to be very protective about the income that you earn. Building wealth is truly about spending less than you make. It's not rocket science. It can be difficult because of lifestyle, because of things that go on in American society where you feel peer pressure or you have expenses because of children or whatever the case may be, you may have those expenses, but it's very important that you control the money that is coming to you. So when we talk about debt, it really is a problem with just spending more than you make and finding ways to do so. People often ask me, well, I only make this much. How do I spend more than I'm making? And the truth is, you're putting it on the credit cards, or you're paying money with interest. And so every month the debt is piling up, the payments are getting higher and higher, and it's becoming more and more difficult for you to live within your means. So if you want to build wealth, your biggest wealth building tool is your income. And we'll talk about how to increase that if you need to. But as we talk about this debt, one of the things that you have to realize is that interest payments are also going up. The same article that came out from the New York Reserve, the Reserve Bank, said that interest payments have doubled in the last 3 years, from 12 billion to 24 billion. So people are paying more in interest every single month as well. So they're not even touching the principal on credit cards, car loans, and things of that nature. In fact, they're finding that defaults are rising as well in those same categories. So we're not really seeing defaults in mortgages. And that could be because people are sitting on equity, or they are making that the priority to pay the mortgage above everything else. But we are seeing delinquencies in credit card bills, in student loans, and then also in car loans. And so those are keys that we're starting to see as stats that are being tracked. And so definitely when you're looking at your debt payments, things that you have to pay off, you got to make sure that you prioritize them. And I'll go through a strategy of how to do so. But of course, your home is going to be number one. For me and my wife, we've had debt challenges at times. And, even today, like we're doing certain things that we're being very proactive in strategies on how we're going to pay off certain debts and really get caught up and start to take that money that we would be paying in interest and moving it over to start putting it into different investments. You have to be strategic in this process. And like I said, I'll kind of go over a couple of things that you can do to implement a strategy. I do want to touch on the fact that they found that the people hurt the most by the current economic trends, inflation and higher credit card balances and higher interest rates, are those who are in middle income brackets. So, if you consider yourself, hey, I make good money, I'm not rich, but I'm not poor, I'm that kind of that middle society, those are the folks being hurt the most with rising interest rates, with inflation, and things of that nature. And so they're finding that those who are in the middle income brackets are actually paying more in interest payments right now. So that is one thing to consider. You have to understand how we got here in the first place. I think most people will realize that, when it comes to paying off debt or getting into debt, inflation has been a major part of it in the last 3 years. And so a lot of the study has gone back and looking at how inflation is impacting the cost of everyday items. We have gas, we have groceries, we have things that we have to pay for. And when inflation is in the market and the economy is a high inflation market, then we tend to take on more debt. Things cost more, and now it becomes harder for you to pay for everyday items. And so we have to tackle inflation. We have to get interest rates down. And I know that's an economic issue that is outside of a lot of our control. It's higher than our pay grade. But knowing the market that we're in will help you understand how you need to be strategic about paying off debt. So first thing I want you to know is when it comes to creating a debt payoff plan, you really have to understand the motivation behind it. If you're not motivated to pay off debt, if you're not motivated to get control of your finances and your monthly budget, it's not going to happen. I can give you all the strategy in the world. I can give you A, B, C, do this, you're golden. But if you're not motivated to do it, if you don't see the value in doing that, you have no real long-term goal of getting out of debt, then it's really not going to help you. And so when you're starting to look at where you're at and starting to analyze things and truly look at your numbers and your monthly budget, you've got to be motivated to do it because it's not going to be easy. There are things that are going to come up. Life is always in session, as I say. So, you got to be ready to say no to certain situations because you have long-term goals. And it could be home ownership. It could just be getting out of debt for getting out of debt's sake, because you want to be more financially sound. You want to start living within your means and start investing and saving for college or start a business, whatever the case may be. You got to find that motivation because that's what's going to push you to reaching your long-term goals. So start there, get started, figure out what is it going to take, but then ultimately you need to realize what's going to motivate you to see it through. So second to that, I would say you need to face your debt head on. As I mentioned, I call debt the silent wealth killer because most people don't even realize how much debt they're in. When we sit down with clients through homeowner prep, we actually talk about looking at your monthly budget, figuring out what's coming in, what's going out. We play defense first, so we try to eliminate unnecessary bills, and so that way we can free up some cash for you to invest or to pay down your debt. But if you don't know your numbers, if you don't know how many credit cards you have, what are the balances due, when are payments due, when do they report to your credit bureaus? There's a lot of different factors. What's the interest rate on each of those credit cards? These are the numbers. This is the information that you need to understand if you're going to get out of debt. So face it head on. You need to know what the balances are. What do you owe? What are the minimum payments on all of your debts? So you can see if you can afford just the minimums first and foremost, and then see how you can accelerate payoffs by implementing one of two strategies. The two best strategies for paying off your personal debt faster are either going to be your Snowball strategy or the Avalanche strategy. And so here's how these work out. If you are in debt, you've understood your motivation, you're ready to go, and then you're now understanding where all your debt is, how many cards you have, you know your stats, right? Then you need to figure out, do I pay these off by paying the lowest balance first or the highest interest first? That's the difference between a Snowball payment plan or an Avalanche payment plan. Me personally, me and my family have gone through a Snowball payment plan because you get to celebrate some small wins, and those small wins will motivate you to keep going. So a Snowball payment plan is once you have a list of all your debts, you see which one has the smallest balance. Maybe you have a card that only has a $200 payoff, the balance that's on the card. And so what you can do is you pay the minimums on all your other debts. Let's say you have 10 different debts, whether it's card payments, credit cards, whatever the case may be. You're going to pay the minimums on everything, and then you're going to implement an extra $50, $100, whatever you can, towards that first smallest balance debt. That's going to be the snowball effect. You pay that off, and then you can take that difference, whatever that minimum was on that debt, plus that extra balance that you were paying on it. Now take that and apply it to the next one. And then before long, you'll see yourself making bigger and bigger payments down the debt line, if you would, and it'll help you pay off those debts faster. That's one strategy. That is a Snowball payment plan. And like I said, the benefit to that is that you actually get motivation. It keeps you motivated through the process, and you get to celebrate the small wins and victories along the way. The opposite to that would be the Avalanche payment plan. Now, with the Avalanche payment plan, you have the same list of all your debts, but now you're looking at what are the highest interest payments being made. So if you have a credit card that is charging you 25% interest, then you may address that first, as opposed to maybe a credit card that's 12%, a car loan that's only 10%. Those will come later. But you attack the first one with the highest interest rate because you're saving yourself the most money by going that route. Now, it could have a higher balance, so it could take a little bit longer to pay it off. But either way, the payment plan is the same as far as minimums on everything. The extra goes to that, whatever's that top line debt, which has the highest interest rate. And you keep making that higher payment on that until it's paid off. and then you move down the line to the next highest interest rate, and so on and so forth. And so that's the avalanche strategy. The benefit, like I said, is that you get to pay off the higher interest rates first, so you're saving yourself the most money, which makes sense. The con would be that yes, it may take you a while to kind of get a victory over that first debt. So you can choose which strategy works best for you, knowing your temperament, knowing your motivation, and just knowing your debt. So definitely face it head on, know what you got to pay, figure out what strategy you're going to implement, and then put it to work. One of the things that's been discussed lately is actually a bill that they're trying to pass where they will cap all credit card interest rates to only 10%. And so if they can do that, then they can cut down on a lot of those credit cards that are charging 25, 28, 27% because they feel like, these are loan sharks. They're not making credit available to you. They're really taking advantage of you. And so that is kind of going through. I wouldn't bank on it. They tried this bill before when they were trying to cap it at 18%, never got a vote, never went through. Now they're trying to pass it where they cap it at 10. And I know current administration said that this was something that was going to be, that they would take into consideration, but we'll see. We'll kind of see where that's at. In the meantime, you got to control what you can control, set up your plan, start paying things off immediately. And that way you can start to really pay down the debt and get some victories along the way. The next strategy that I would definitely recommend is you got to get to a point to where you're not so reliant on using your credit card for daily expenses. And I know this is tough because we're dealing with a market that is, we're going through inflation and things of that nature, but you have to start to put some money away for emergencies, even if it's $50 a month. I always set a goal with our clients to say, hey, in order to get off of the credit card usage, we have to set up something to where you can tap into it whenever you come into a jam, whenever it comes into an emergency. And I'm not talking about your long-term emergency fund where you have 3 to 6 months, but just saving $1,000 could make a difference. You have a flat tire, you can use those funds and replenish it. Something comes up with the family or emergency, like whatever situation is, if you have $1,000, you can kind of pull yourself off of the credit cards. You can wean yourself off. And so that is definitely my suggestion. After you've taken a look at all your debt, you have a monthly spending plan, you know where your money is going, you've played defense, so you've cut back on any expenses that you have away for that $1,000 emergency fund. Again, this isn't the 3 to 6 month that we'll eventually get to, but $1,000 could really help you kind of wean yourself off of credit cards. And so definitely start to put, again, $50 to $100 away. And in this situation, I would say put it into a savings account that you have access to, but not easy access to. Meaning, let's say you have your standard that you use all the time. And then you go to a credit union and you just open up a savings account there. That way you can deposit money. You can deposit it directly from your paycheck if you want, to have it go direct deposit into that account and have it set up so that you don't have a debit card with easy access to it. So if something does come up, then you have to go to the bank, you have to get those funds and then use them. You want to make it easy, but not too easy, And so the reason why I bring that up is because some people say, oh, well, I'm putting money into my retirement account, which is great. But if something were to come up, it could take 3 to 5 business days for that retirement account to send that money to you. And so with a savings account at a credit union, even if the bank is closed, you can go the next morning and have access to that money. And so that's why I said, kind of set up a savings account, set up some direct deposit to that. Don't get a debit card to that account. Make it a little bit harder on yourself to have access to that. So that way you only get to it when you need it in an emergency. So definitely think about that. Another system that they talk about, this isn't really a system that I've used, but I've heard of people using it, is the envelope system. The envelope system says this: when you go to, when you get your direct deposit to your bank account, you pull out money for expenses. And it's literally a cash system. So cash envelope, however you want to say it. And this is to cover some of these daily expenses, entertainment, food, gas, things of that nature. And you literally will have separate envelopes for all these different expenses. Now, let's say I have an entertainment folder, an envelope, and I have maybe $200 budgeted for the month for entertainment. Once that money runs out, that's it. It's all about free entertainment at that point. And so that's a system that you can use as well if you are comfortable with handling cash, and you can implement that system to truly have your envelope system ready and accessible. You can implement that, but again, it's not something that I've implemented. We have a monthly budget that we tend to use different software for. I always recommend to clients like You Need a Budget or Every Dollar as some of the different softwares out there, because you can do some tracking. But have a system that works for you. Again, envelope system didn't necessarily work for me and my family, but it might work for you. The key is to have a system and to put it into use, because that'll help you kind of lock in on the strategy and keep you on track to reaching your goal of being debt free. And so I definitely would recommend that. As I mentioned, sometimes, you play defense, you do all that you can, and you're like, okay, I'm doing all that I can. We're still spending so much money, and I don't know what else to do. I just don't have enough money. I always hear it said, I have more month than I have money. It's unfortunate. It does happen. Sometimes you play as much defense as you can. You're cutting back on expenses, but you're just simply not making enough. And so your only option at this point is to check with your current job to see if you can do overtime work, if there's extra assignments, if there are bonuses that you may be eligible for, things of that nature. That may be an opportunity where you're already at. Another thing that has happened, especially in generations before us, but there's still a lot of folks in the same situation where people work a second job. They work a swing shift or a night shift or weekends, whatever the case may be. They're having to bring in extra income. And so working a second job is an option. We're going to have some guests on this podcast in the future that will talk about different opportunities for second jobs, what the next generation is calling side hustles. These are things that can help you earn some additional income. See if they're worth it, see what the time commitments are on each of these things. But I do plan to have guests come on and talk about different ways that you can earn extra income, because I think that is important when it comes to, setting your budget, trying to pay off debt, and you're trying to do all these different things. And like I said, sometimes you just don't make enough. And so you have to find a way to make more. So we will have people come on, talk about, how to make more at your work, how to ask for a raise, but then also some side hustles, things that you can do to earn income if that's an opportunity for you. If you have some time, like I said, on the weekend, nights, or whatever the case may be, that might be an opportunity just for a while to get you out of debt. So definitely keep that in mind. And you do want to have a spending plan. I always talk about this, when it comes to budgeting. A lot of people don't want to hear that word budget, but a spending plan is basically you telling your money where you want it to go. And so you have a plan, you implement it, things will come up. Like I said, it's good to have like $1,000 for that quick emergency fund. Eventually get to 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund is great. But when you have a plan, at least you have a structure. You have a framework of what your month should do. And the more you can stay on track with that plan, the better off you'll be as to reaching your financial goals, getting out of debt, or buying a home if that is one of your goals. And so definitely put a plan together, implement the strategy. I don't care if you write it out or if you're using technology, using software, just have something set up every month before the month starts to tell your money where to go. Don't let your money tell you where to go. So that would be my advice when it comes to having a spending plan, AKA a budget. So keep that in mind. And then, as I mentioned, when it comes to putting some money away, try to find ways to make that as easy as possible. And don't try to bite off more than you can chew right out the gate. So when I talk to clients, they say, oh, well, I'm going to save $500 a month. Well, if you go from saving 0 to 500, you might find it difficult. It might be a difficult transition. And so try to start with percentages as opposed to dollar amounts. I know people say, oh, save $500 a month, whatever the case may be. If you're not currently saving or investing anything, start with just 1% of your income. It's very easy to say, oh, well, hey, if I'm making $1,000, how easy is it just to put away $10? You know, so that way you can just say, hey, I'm just doing 1%. The next month, okay, I kind of mastered the 1%. Let's do 2%. By the end of the year, if you're going up 1% a month for 12 years, you'll be saving or investing 12%. And so just start small. Don't try to jump all in. It's going to be difficult, especially if you're coming from a situation where you have a lot of debt. You've been having a hard time managing your money, and you find yourself going the opposite direction. The first key is to stop digging and then start small. Take those first baby steps to really start to implement your plan. And again, base it on a percentage as opposed to a dollar amount, because it's a lot easier to save 1% or invest 1% than it is to save $500 or $1,000 when that could be 20 to 30%. So just keep that in mind. I know you're gung-ho or you're excited, especially when you put a plan together. Things do get exciting, but just try to keep it simple. It's going to help you in the long run. Ultimately, you got to have some help. You got to have some support. If it's just you, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be hard to stay encouraged, and it's going to be very easy to be influenced through peer pressure. And so get some accountability. If you and your spouse are on the same page financially, implement something to where you can hold each other accountable as a team, not as, trying to call each other out and making it kind of a punishment. Think of things as a team, what you can do to reach your financial goals. You want to encourage each other and help kind of move the train along, get out of debt and accomplish your goals. And then if you don't have a spouse or somebody in the household, get an accountability partner. Chances are your friends or a family member are in your same situation. They have debt, they have financial goals that they want to do, they want to accomplish, and they're just not doing it because they don't have somebody holding them accountable. So you can help them, they can help you. Get an accountability partner. And if you're, looking online for free resources, there are nonprofit organizations that can help you as well, like credit.org, where they will meet with you and help you put together a game plan to pay off your debt and hold you accountable to it. One of the organizations, obviously, that I'm a part of is Homeowner Prep, where if you're in the process of buying a home and you need to work on getting out of debt, we would help you through that process as well, hold you accountable, and make sure that you're paying off debt and putting things into perspective for you. So you need to have some accountability. You need to have somebody there to stand by your side, hold you accountable, help you reach those goals, because that's actually going to help you reach those goals faster than you could on your own. So utilize access to resources, be somebody else's help them become, debt-free as you walk on your journey to becoming debt-free, and celebrate the small victories along the way. This news article that came out was very alarming. I think it's something that we should all take very serious. When it says that household debt is up to $1.21 trillion, we need to take notice. You can't control the economy. You can't control inflation and interest rates and things of that nature, but you can control your household budget, your household spending, and ultimately help you get to your own personal financial goals no matter what's going on in the economy. So don't be part of the culture when it comes to being so heavily in debt. Be countercultural, pay off debt, save money, invest, and reach your financial goals. So that is my encouragement to you. I truly hope that you got some value from today's episode. If you have any questions at all, if you need help, if you need some resources, or you just need to talk a little bit more about your unique situation, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find us on all social media platforms at Just Got Paid Pod, and then you can even reach me on Instagram at Eric Hellon. So that is definitely some of the information that I want to cover today. I hope you got value, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Just Got Paid podcast. Take care, and God bless.